You're listening to Worshipology with Kurtis Parks, a biblical, practical, and spiritual conversation about living and leading worship. Let's lean into today's episode.
Well, hey, thanks so much for listening to Worshipology. This is a podcast for worship teams, worship leaders, worshipers, and our hope is to equip you to do what you do a little more effectively. And man, today I'm in Nashville, Tennessee at Cornerstone Church, and I'm joined by worship leader, songwriter, Zach Loomis. Man, we met, when did we meet? Like 2014?
Yeah, I think so, 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
Right around
and
there.
You came to NCC-led worship. You had written a song that got on a big Assemblies of God album, the SOAR album. And I was like, man, this guy has a really dope voice. We've written songs together. Dude, just give a little snapshot of your story and how you got in worship, man.
The funny thing, that weekend, I lost my voice.
I remember.
Like,
and I was like, no, the voice that I wanted to hear.
I'm like, dude, I'm so sorry.
Well, it was like the multiple services curse, man. It's like, you know, we're about to go to 4 services this weekend.
Oh, bless your soul.
And so I'm just getting as many people as I can. Hey, you're leading a song?
Dude,
I'm only leading one
that's a lot,
per
bro.
service.
That's exciting, but that's a ton.
It's going to be good. Yeah.
You're going to be napping.
We're growing, man. We're growing.
Napping Sunday afternoon.
Dude, you know it. The Sunday afternoon nap is like the worship leader.
Oh.
You just look forward to that.
It's heaven.
Man. The decompress.
It's heaven. Yeah, so we met in 14. Like you said, just was on a really cool project with a lot of different churches. I was a worship pastor in Cleveland at the time. Had a really awesome church up there. And was coming back and forth to Nashville writing. Wrote a song with an awesome writer, Philippa Hanna, who she just had an idea, so we just went for it. And then it was one of those songs that you just felt like God was breathing on it. Yeah. And we still do it here.
That's cool.
And other churches have been doing it. So it's been cool to see that one little offering take off. So we're in Nashville now, and we've been around. Grew up in Cleveland. Met my wife in Clarksville, which is about 40 minutes north of Nashville. And then we were worship pastors in Greenville for 2 years at a great church there. And then coming up, it'll be 2 years here at Cornerstone.
Wow.
So 2 little kiddos, a 9-month-old and a 4-year-old boy. And
yep. And I saw he's getting on the drums.
He's getting everything, bro.
He's everywhere,
everything.
man. I mean, if you got 2 parents who are worship leaders, he's pretty much his
dude, they have
destiny
no
is
choice. Yeah, we'll bring the sound check, and I'll grab my mic for him, and he knows if there's no batteries. So he's just like, no, don't try and mess with me. But
he's on to you.
Yeah, I'm a PK too. So growing up in church was part of it, and Emily and I are not withholding any of that. Of like, there's long days. This is what we do as a family. It's not just dad and mom. Yeah. So even as 4 and 9 months, I want them to know that it can be a healthy place. Yeah. You don't have to be a crazy PK.
Bro, let me park there for a minute, because I think that's so cool when you bring your kids, because we're kind of in the same place at Destination. Our kids are always with us at church. My daughter comes to rehearsal with us. Like, I think there's this thing in some of us where it's like, we've got to keep church and home separate, and there is a healthy balance with that.
For sure.
But when you can bring your kids into the ministry, talk about that a little bit. How do you guys do that practically? How do you not burn yourselves out? How do you have a healthy life outside the church, but also bring home into the church?
Yeah, well, I think like growing up as a pastor's kid, my parents, they brought us in conversations with what the church was struggling with. Not airing out dirty laundry on people, because you know, as kids, you just can't handle it.
Right.
But they always brought us in the conversations. Even if there was a transition in our family, they would say, hey, before we tell anybody, we feel like God is moving us this way, so just begin to prepare.
Wow.
So there was those hard moments, but also just looking back at it now as a 37-year-old, like, I'm thankful that I had parents who were transparent and like knew when they messed up in ministry and talked through it. Yep. And then celebrated the wins with us as kids. So I got 3 siblings, so we were always a part of it.
Wow.
But with Emily and I, our relationship, she works here full time as well. She's a worship pastor. You know, she does all the admin stuff that I'm terrible at in the worship ministry. But then also outside of this place, outside of our worship ministry, she's involved in so many branches of the church. Yeah. So it's been a balance of, in our relationship, how do we not talk about church all the time? Right. Which is hard, because we're processors. I'm not much of a reactor. I'm a processor. She's the same way. So we just kind of made a rule. A lot of times we have about a 30-minute ride home, and that's the time where we can get it out.
That's so good.
And as soon as we get the kids, they're still young enough, they don't really care, and they're just doing whatever. And then we get home, it's like, no, we have to shut it off.
Yeah.
So we're not great at it because we've been through a lot in the 2 years we've been here. A lot of lows and a lot of victories as well, a lot of highs. But yeah, we're not perfect at it, but it's a learned habit, I think, of figuring out when to be toxic and like when to give it to Jesus and say, I can't talk about it anymore.
Wow.
So,
yeah, that's so good.
Yeah.
And you guys lead worship together on stage. You work together every day, I imagine.
Yeah.
So there's got to be that time where it's like, I was just listening to a pastor's wife talk this week, and she was like, when we go on date night, there's 2 rules. We don't talk about church. We don't talk about the kids.
Yeah.
And then you're thinking, well, what can you talk about? But they have so many other things in their life that they kind of, force themselves to like, hey, we've got to have a life outside of all of this stuff. But I just commend you guys because it was cool. We were at a church planting event for those who are listening this whole week here, hosted in Nashville at Cornerstone Church, and Zach and Emily and the team here at Cornerstone led us in worship several times, and it was just awesome to kind of see that dynamic. And for those who are listening, maybe just explain a little bit. I mean, Cornerstone is a church. At one time, I think it was like the largest Assemblies of God church in Tennessee, if not this side of the country. And you guys have gone through so many changes throughout the years, and watching your story, watching your journey, it's been so cool to kind of see your faithfulness through all of that. But talk a little bit about what does it look like to go through maybe different leadership changes as a worship pastor at a church, and how do you stay on track with all that?
Yeah, this church is amazing because it's been around, I think, for 30 years.
Wow.
It started in a basement. Just a handful of people just believing that God would move.
Wow.
And zero money, just big faith.
Yeah.
And then a pastor came on and built it up to, he was a great man of God, built it up to around 4,000 people.
Wow.
At one point.
Wow.
But then he kind of saw where it was he saw some blind spots, handed it off to his son, and he was a great leader. And so when we came 2 years ago, we weren't looking to move from Greenville.
Wow.
Like we bought a house. We were, if you've been to Greenville, it's a beautiful city because it's in the mountains and there's city, and like you can do both. Kind of like here a little bit. So we bought a house, and then 6 months later, I get a Facebook message from our previous pastor.
Wow.
On a Saturday night at like 11 o'clock. And if you're like me, dude, 8 p.m. we're shutting it down.
Yeah.
Like there's no hanging out with people on Saturday nights because there's nothing worse than leading exhausted and grumpy.
Yeah.
So
it feels like Saturday night is when you always get that text, hey, I'm sick, I can't play drums tomorrow.
Yeah, I just say power through, bud.
All right, let's go.
Just power through. It's only 2 services. So we got a Facebook message, and he said, we have all these applicants. We're looking for a worship leader, but we don't see your resume. And I said, well, I didn't know you were looking, and we'll talk tomorrow.
Yeah.
So all that next day, I told Emily, like, he's going to ask us if we were interested in the job.
Wow.
He wouldn't just reach out.
Yep.
Pastors don't normally just reach out to other worship people or other staffers just to get to know you. So he offered us a job. We prayed about it, and at first we said no because we just didn't feel like it was the right move.
Wow.
Because our hearts were connected in Greenville. Yeah. And I was coming back and forth writing probably twice, every 3 months.
Wow. Okay.
And then I have, my little sister lives here, so we're always here. So my yes came fast. I'm just like, let's do it. Yeah. Sounds fun.
Yeah.
But I didn't want Emily to resent me in 5 years, pulling her along,
right, and
being like, "What are you doing?"
One stop to the next.
Yeah, I don't want to live that life. So I just said, "Well, it has to be a mutual yes." And so she prayed. We fasted about it, and finally, God opened the door. Said yes. Went to our pastor in Greenville. Is that like real awkward conversation?
Right.
And before I started the conversation, he said, "Yeah, it's good. You need to go."
Wow.
I'm like, how do you even know? And he said, "Well, I just feel it, man."
Yeah.
So we came here in April of 2021. We were here for 2 weeks, and our pastor went on a sabbatical.
Wow.
Just like I've made and probably you've made, just poor decisions in ministry that either you have to take time off or disqualifies you, and in that case, it was more of the latter. So we went through 10 months of no lead pastor.
Wow.
So I looked at Emily and I said, this is why God has brought us here.
Wow.
So, we'll do we'll do 2% of worship leading on stage with a microphone, but then the other 98% has to be with our people because we have to lead them.
Wow.
And we have to love them and care for them because and I don't want to speak poorly by anybody because I've made a ton of mistakes myself, but it was more built on a personality. So when that personality was taken out of the picture, a lot of people are like, what do we do now?
Wow.
So we went in like overdrive mode of loving on people and taking care of people. And it was a hard 10 months. We had a great interim pastor who, kind of going back a long way around to your question, whatever leadership you're under, it's all submission, right? Like it's submission to God and dying to yourself, dying to what songs I want to do. I want to sit in my office all day and write songs. I want to be in town writing songs with people. But if that's not the vision of the house, God will bless when you get under that covering.
Yeah.
But while the intern pastor was here, he kind of granted us like, do what you guys do, get in your wheelhouse, and love the people and do what you do. So, I mean, we released 5 songs, 5 originals in just over a year.
Wow.
Only to keep our people busy, really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
hey, we're moving somewhere. We're going somewhere.
We're doing something.
Yeah.
And then our new pastor, Pastor Jeremy, still came in October of 22 last year.
Awesome.
And just to see the health of the church come back in. And really, I told him, like, man, it feels there's a blanket of peace in this place.
Wow. Where
it was such an unnerving, unsure feeling. And I'm like, I don't care what you do. You can do whatever you want. Just like, God is moving. God is like, it feels right.
Yeah.
And he's such a man of God, and he's so like humble. And like yesterday, we had a staff prayer. I think while y'all were finishing up your thing, he was like, "We're just going to call a staff prayer."
Wow!
And the presence of God was so strong in the room, and I just looked over, and we're all praying. He's just flat out on the floor crying. And I'm like, "That's the leader you want.
There you go.
That's the guy you want to follow."
Yeah.
So, it's been we could do a whole hour on stories of what happened, but none of it really matters.
Yeah.
Just God was faithful through it all.
Wow. And it says a lot to your guys' commitment to this house to kind of see through that transitional period because, it's not easy to walk through that and you're trying to learn one leader and then another leader and just trying to figure out. But you said something in there that was so key. And, submission is not one of those words that we love in this day and age, but it's so biblical. Yeah. It's so biblical. And it really just means to yield. It means to like, defer your preferences to the preferences of the house. And we were actually in one of the sessions that we had this week in the church planting event I was a part of. Somebody said something that's just really stuck with me. They said, the house is a covering. And so what we bring our gifts, and it's not about our gifts and our platform. It's about what does the house need in this moment. Yeah. And so if somebody comes in with like a prophetic gifting, hey, it's great that you have that, but if it doesn't submit to the vision of the house, like you're probably not going to get on a microphone and share that like anytime you want.
Right.
Because gifts, if you have 100 people in a room, and this church, the auditorium seats 2,900. So I know you got more than 100. Yeah. But if you have 100 people coming into a room, all with different gifts, and everybody just wants to elevate their gift and do what they want to do and their preferences, it's going to be chaos. But when everything submits to a general vision, then it works in order, and then it works. I love that, man. I think
people dwell in unity.
Come on, man.
That's where it is.
And I think there's a blessing in that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Psalm 133, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So talk to me a little bit about those songs that you were writing in that season, because you were just showing me one of the songs, and you call out anxiety in this song, but I know there's been a season where, those 10 months, let's say, you're writing songs, you're releasing songs. What's the undercurrent of those songs, and how do you keep people together moving forward in a time where, leadership is in flux,
Sure. Well, you get it as a songwriter, you're kind of pulling double duty where you write for yourself, what you're facing, what you need from God, or what how your heart responds to Jesus, whether that's like super celebratory songs or singer-songwriter. It's pretty much what David did, right?
Laments, right?
Yeah, without Logic or Pro Tools, he did, he couldn't
if David had Logic.
Oh, dude, the auto-tune. But, when we came, I just started writing where we were in that moment. When our lead pastor at the time left, what do we need to sing about? And our first single as a, and I don't like those words because it sounds really like industry, and that is just not my heart. Like, but the first song that we released was Emmanuel.
Wow.
And he's God with us.
Yeah.
So just being really intentional.
That's so good.
About like, what do we need our people to sing right now?
Wow.
And the chorus is just the one who was, the one who is, the one who will always be. Emmanuel, you're here with me. So it's a really simple line.
Wow.
But when you're singing that out loud, you're just reminding yourself, right?
Yeah.
And then we did a few other tunes that I just had kind of in the back burner that were going along with our sermon series.
Yeah.
But the one song that you helped me out with, you, Brittany, and Delaney
that
came
was
in
a
here
fun
one
write.
day.
That was a fun write.
And that was cool because it was like, if anybody has been in a songwriting session, it can be kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you and we could sit down and like disagree, and it wouldn't hurt a friendship. It wouldn't be a big deal. But when there's 4 people in the room, it can get like real sloppy Joe sometimes because everyone's fighting for a moment.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way. You're just
standing up for your lines, for your
heart.
Yeah.
You're putting, effort.
Yeah.
So we all came in this office that we're in now, and I just started telling you guys a little bit about about 6 months into it, our full-time audio guy passed away of COVID. And it was him and I got super, super close, and big, strong Samoan guy, just like, he got mad at me one time, and I didn't want it to happen again. 'Cause I'm like, he could break me, and I'm not a small guy.
You can have your way.
He could break me easily. And so he was in the hospital, or his wife contracted COVID when it was kind of at a peak for a second. And he texted me. He's like, I need to take her to the hospital to get tested and all this stuff. So I just had an idea of a chorus, and I came up here and recorded it real quick, and I sent it to him. And while he was sitting outside because he couldn't go in, that whole deal. And I said, just play this in your car, man. It's a terrible recording, but we're just really speaking this over you and your wife.
Wow.
And so she got better. He contracted COVID, and then about 3 months later passed away.
Wow.
But when we came in here that day, everyone was so kind of in the same mindset of like, we have to put our trust in him.
Yeah.
Because we all started telling stories of what we're facing,
what
we're walking through. And then that became like a really big song here for our church.
That's awesome.
And it was a healing moment. And then, it was played at his funeral.
Wow.
And so that was great, but also terrible.
Wow.
But it was great to see God use it.
Yeah.
And he's left, and everybody's still, we all miss him, but believe. And his family, they're thriving now. They're really obviously going through it all, but they're doing great. And
well, and I think that's the key. Like, just to pause you there, like I think sometimes we get in this mindset of like, let's write songs for a project, but you write songs for people. And that's so cool because, from that song to the one that you just showed me that hasn't released yet. By the way, we're going to put that song that Zach just referenced in our show notes so you can listen to that.
Yeah.
And we'll put some more stuff in the show notes as well. But the song that you just showed me, tell me a little bit about the story for that, because it hasn't been released yet.
Yeah.
But I just love what you're talking about, how, we need to sing the stories of our people. We need to sing and write songs that are in the house because it just, people latch onto that. This is our story. This is our song.
Sure. Yeah, we're excited about this new one because I really believe it has, just like we talk, we can write songs all day, but there's something about a song that if God's on it, it's just like old school delirious stuff and stuff that we grew up on that you can listen to now. And some things may be outdated, but it's still like, it's still
Wanna
awesome.
go deeper.
Yeah.
Martin Smith. That's like the third time Martin Smith has come up this week. Like, delirious shaped my youth.
He comes. Dude, we had Stu G in with us.
Come on, dude.
Last August.
Oh my gosh.
So we got to lead "Did You Feel the Mountains Tremble?"
Oh man.
And I was just sitting there like, this is not real.
No. That is an
such
out of
a
body
sweet
experience.
Guy.
That's amazing.
I didn't care if it landed in the service or not. I was like, this is for me.
Let's go.
So we were getting ready for a worship conference, a one-day worship conference, and we had our mutual buddy Jesse Reeves come in, speak at it.
Love Jesse.
And so we were preparing for that, and we were going to do a live recording, and we had one song that we were going to do, and just more of it's called "So in Love," just talking about just being perfectly in love with Jesus, singing about his faithfulness, making it as vertical as we can, right?
Yeah.
But I knew, I told him, I think we need another song. And I didn't know where it was going to come from. And so we sat there, and one of our main kind of vocalists, he's in our choir, he's a choir director, or choir section leader. And he quit his job because he was having such severe anxiety attacks and panic attacks. And they were, affecting his marriage. It was bad. It wasn't just like, some people are like, I got a weird vibe. Like, he was
debilitated.
So we were praying for him, and, a lot of our guys were coming around him. But I knew, like, there's got to be more I can do as a friend, as a leader, other than just being like, let's go get coffee. And we did all that to keep him close. And he, like I said, he resigned from his job, couldn't get off the couch, and I was driving home one day, and it just kind of hit me of like, why don't we sing in the confidence that we are free?
Wow.
Why don't we believe it for real?
Yeah.
Because we can sing it, I'm gonna see a victory,
right?
While you're thinking in the back of your mind, like,
maybe, yeah, maybe,
hopefully,
wow.
And so I just kind of was driving home, and just a quick, I'm free in the name of Jesus. Every stronghold has to break. It doesn't possibly need to break. Like, it has to break. And when he walks into the room, everything changes. Everything shifts.
Yeah.
And I said, I sent him the idea of just, a iPhone memo. And I said, just praying this chorus over you. And I sent it to our buddy John Hartley, who he's been like a spiritual mentor, a songwriting mentor, a person who I can call who just
John.
Goes, talk, bud. And I'll just talk. And I have said more things to him that people would be like,
Uncle Johnny.
Yikes. But he's just been such a solid friend to me. And he said, you need to write that song.
Wow.
And he goes, you need to write it. No, we're not going to do a co-write and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so 2 weeks before the conference, I text all our guys in our band. I said, we have to do another rehearsal. I have a song. Yeah. And we put it together in a night, and it came out really strong, really solid. And God touched, his name's Patrick. God touched Patrick, and he's, now he works for like the state here in Tennessee. So he went from like quitting his job because of anxiety, now has the most anxious job of all time, and he's doing great. Like,
that's amazing.
He sang on Tuesday night. He was He was the taller guy. On Tuesday night.
Yeah.
So we're excited to release. I don't know what date we're releasing it, but I really believe like even if it's just for Patrick, it's enough.
Yeah.
But if it's enough for our church, that's enough. Like, I don't have strategies. I don't have plans to like. I know it's very smart to do like marketing strategies, content creation, but at the end of the day, and I don't mean this like to where it sounds super spiritual or lazy on my part, but if we really like believe what he says, if we lift him up, he draws men to himself.
Come on.
And strategies, the marketing plan are super, super important.
Yeah.
Like it gets to the people, right?
Sure. But
it's hard to live in that world and then stay tender to be like, God, what do you want for this thing to do?
Wow.
And I'd much rather stay tenderhearted than like trying to like scheme for how can I get this in front of another 1,000 people?
That's so good, man. And that's something that we need to hear today, because there's so many people that are, writing songs for their church with the mindset of like, I want to get this out there. I want to get this beyond. But if you're not writing for your church first, for your people first, check your motives, man.
Right.
And it's so clear to me that your heart is for this house. And I think that's something that every worship team, every worship leader needs to hear, is have a heart for your house. Yeah. These are the people that God's called you to serve, to do life with every single day. I want to shift gears a little bit. You were leading worship this week for this church planting event. And one of the things I love about you, Zach, is that you lead worship following the Holy Spirit. I mean, it's so obvious that like, it's not about getting from one song to the next song. It's like, hey man, if the Holy Spirit's moving, let's just rest here. Let's just park here for a minute. I want to ask you, like, how do you intentionally create Spirit-led moments as you're leading worship? Or how do you make room for the Spirit to move in the way that only the Holy Spirit can? And the reason I ask this is because, you're leading worship at this very large church. You've been at many large churches. And I think sometimes the question is like, is it production or is it presence?
Sure.
And I think what I've seen in you is that you found this way of writing both of those lines, where it's done with excellence. There's a high production value to it all, but it's all about God's presence. Talk to me for a moment about that.
Yeah, I think we're figuring, as you lead more and more. I grew up in all this, like I said earlier, and I've been doing it for a while, but you still are figuring out how to do it the best way. And I really, a lot of because we have a good sized team here. God has blessed us with a lot of amazing people who tour full time, who do all these things. So we're constantly talking about performance of saying it's not a performance, right? But on the flip, it totally is.
Right.
Because I want to be led. People come on a weekend who are going through some wild stuff. They want to be led. So you're performing to pull them somewhere from A to B, right? And one thing I'm thankful for, real quick, our pastor now, he's like, worship is not the appetizer. Like,
so good.
Like, you're not just setting me up for success. Like as soon as that first note hits, like he goes, our prayer is that automatically people realize Jesus is here.
Let's go.
And they respond.
Yeah.
So I tell people, like, it's not a performance, but 1,000% it is. So when you're stepping on the stage, no matter if it's an altar moment, like, you're on.
Yeah.
Like, there's no turning back, right? But I'm so laid back, like my personality. So the fact of like trying to like really hype people up, wears me out.
Yeah.
So we have like, I'd rather have people around me who are really good at it, so I can just kind of fade out, and then I'll come in and do whatever God called me to do.
Yep.
But I think it's just being sensitive, and it's a learned thing, right? And it comes back to surrendering to that moment that you're in. Like yesterday, we changed the set list because it's a Thursday morning. You all have been in a conference all week. A room full of pastors who serve and serve and serve. So they come in. They don't need me to, come on, I can't hear you out there.
Right.
They don't care.
Yeah.
And so we changed the set list Wednesday night of like, hey, we need to shift to a more like just welcoming.
Yeah.
Singing God's faithfulness,
Yeah.
not a big hurrah. When there's nothing wrong with the party.
Yeah.
But the party without substance is just noise, right?
All right.
So, and my mom was a worship leader, and I watched her growing up of like trying to like pastor the moment and pastor the people that are in the room. And, the days of live streaming and like, man, I am glad that COVID's over.
Right.
So we didn't have to. It was hard leading to a camera. It was hard. That was brutal.
Phew.
And I mean, people suffered way more than that. So I don't want to, But I think here, especially, it's pastoring the moment of where do we feel God pulling us, and you miss it because we're human.
Yeah.
But I always tell our people like let it breathe because people are so, especially like here in town where we're at, like just even to get here with the traffic is nuts. So they don't need us screaming at them to perform for us.
Wow.
Like we just got to say, Jesus, here's Jesus. How good is he?
Yeah.
How great is he?
That's good, Zach.
And then you just go, I'll lead when I need to lead, right?
Yeah.
But our church right now it's the hungriest I've seen.
Wow.
A group of people.
It's amazing.
So it's really easy to lead, and it's really it's the most enjoyable. I think it's been worship leading in a long time. So.
That's so good. I just had coffee with a guy this morning, and I think, one of the things that we were talking about is like there is a general hunger for something real right now.
Yeah.
People are just desperate with hope, and we can see this all around. I mean, just this week, and I'm not sure when this will air, but just this week, Nashville went through a horrible tragedy with the school shooting, and it's just so evident that like evil is real.
Right.
And the world needs Jesus, and we can see that more and more every single week. And the hope that compels us, the hope that drives us on, we've got to live that out every single day. We've got to live it out in our set list. We've got to live it out, Monday to Saturday, not just on Sundays. And it's the hope of Jesus. That's the only thing that will keep us going in this life, man. Dude, we got just a few more minutes, and I've been asking every single worship leader this question: what is the Holy Spirit speaking to you right now? For the current climate that we're in, that you just, man, this could be for the body of Christ.
I think personally, for me, it's contentment. I've been facing that a lot.
Wow.
I struggle a lot with insecurity. And, even this week being in a room full of pastors, in the back of your mind, you're like, man, they're just either nitpicking or they're feeling insecure sitting in a big room full of pastors.
Right.
And I think we all struggle with it.
Absolutely.
And so just being content in who God's called me to be and in being the person who he has designed me to be in this moment. Just like everyone's story, God's redemptive power. I mean, I was at a big church in Cleveland, made some big mistakes in Cleveland, disqualified myself from ministry, and had to step completely out of it. And I went through a phase of like, wait, who am I without a guitar?
Wow.
Can I go to church without having to be the guy?
Yeah.
And I was really, I mean, real quick, and I don't mean to go too deep with it, but I was really an affirmation junkie.
Yeah.
Because in Cleveland, if you can write a song and sing well, you're like, here we go, Bubba.
It's a hard rock and roll.
And so I leaned into that instead of just leaning in like pastoring the people and taking that in. You know, put out an album that I'm still proud of, and I mean, you helped me write a song on it.
Yeah,
so it's like, I'm still very proud of what God did through that. But there was a season of pulling away, and I had to go work at a gym.
Wow.
And went through that, and then just went to church. And there was a season of like, how do I just be?
Yeah.
And got a job at a construction company.
Wow.
Chopped off my finger.
Oh no.
And luckily they, you guys can't see it, but they did.
They can still sew it on, the nub.
They put it back. And there's a steel, I mean, there's a whole steel rod that's supposed to be all the way down, but I can totally, move it. But just, all that to say, like, in our worship leading, Emily and I try in every moment of God has been faithful. And he's not going to lie, so he's going to be faithful tomorrow. So instead of this, as a worship leader, I think a lot of us can live into this. As long as people are outwardly worshiping, we feel like we're doing our job.
Wow.
But man, I receive more sitting in my office or at home, like just chilling, listening to music, than I do even when a person's speaking.
Wow.
And that's just me. Like other people,
Yeah.
But contentment, and we go back to submission, surrender. And as a guy, it's sometimes it's hard to do. Just surrendering to just either somebody else's preferences, somebody else's thoughts of how to do it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of smarter people than I am, so I'm like, yeah, they're probably right.
Wow.
And then just right now, we're doing our best just to pastor the people off the stage.
Yeah.
I think if we pastor them off the stage well and equip them, like on the stage, it's going to flow through.
That's so good.
So we want to pastor our people. We want every room we lead that is fully engaged in worship, and then equip the people, because that's your and I's job, is equipping the saints, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
that's so good, man. I appreciate your transparency and vulnerability and just sharing that, because I think a lot of us, if we're honest with ourselves, we deal with insecurity and just finding that contentment.
Sure,
man. Dude, you've been a blessing, man. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thanks for having me, man.
Love you, bro.
Love you, dude.
You've been listening to Worshipology with Kurtis Parks. To learn more and to find resources for worship leaders and teams, you can visit kurtisparks.com.